Okay, now we come to question and discussion time, and so if you have questions, please be preparing those. I wanted to start off this panel discussion with referring to the comments that I made in my presentation and in the same area Paul made in his presentation, and that relates to sales training. Sales training in the context of achieving transformation in sales. And I made a comment that perhaps publishers were not spending enough training days. Paul's comment was, you just need to be doing enough training. Now that may or may not be the same thing. That's what I want to discuss. And I also know that from Rasmus's point of view, from Mono's point of view, they also put a lot of emphasis on being close to the salesman and the sales process. So I think I'd like to develop this discussion between us now to say, what sales training should we be investing in here? We're talking about moving a very large sales force from being one product to being a salesman of digital agency services, which seems to be one hell of a shift, and therefore sales training or retraining seems to be very appropriate. So what should we be doing? And I would like, when we've discussed this a little bit, to get your views as to how much time should we be investing in sales training here. Do we measure it in days or weeks or in dollars, or how should we be looking at sales training? So, Paul, let me ask you to develop your discussion somewhat more by saying we need to be doing enough sales training. What exactly do you mean by that?
I think there's do you want to keep my microphone? I think there's, I'm going to pause words here. There's a difference between training and education. I think what I was referring to specifically is that the sales calls are getting longer and longer and longer. They've been getting longer since I started in the business in 1990. So we have a challenge of how do we manage our sales costs there? And when we talk digital, everyone thinks we need to be digital experts. We need to really understand what's going on. And I don't believe that. I believe there's a level you need to get to. And I think my analogy about when we saw print ads, we weren't Photoshop experts. You know, we said, we can alter the image. We didn't tell them we open up the file and we use the brush tool and we do all this, which is not that bad an analogy. They need to be trained how to do it. We need to manage the sales call time better. And that's a function of training. How do we communicate this? And I think you showed up there, when you look online at what you're buying, you only usually have 3 options max. You buy the starter, the basic, and the pro. Pretty much everything you have online. But we have 50,000 different combinations of items and books and stuff, so we actually make it more complicated. And you can see I've broken it down to 6 bundles. And every new customer, if I don't have a 99% penetration on one of those bundles, if they go a la carte and buy something else, I have a problem with my sales force. I want them selling bundles, and I want to keep it simple, and I want them out there, and I want them doing it.
Certainly the keeping it simple message has been discussed yesterday and today as well. And one of the things that I often am asked to look at in the sales auditing process is, where do we stand today? Because if we're going to be transitioning, then it's useful to know what the starting point is. And that's a question of if we've always been selling on value, it's much easier to be moving than if we've been selling on emotion. I refer to something else that I said in my presentation, is that some publishers talk about we've always sold on emotion and it's worked pretty well, and that's the way we want to continue. Rasmus, what's your view on selling on emotion?
Yeah, I love selling on emotion. I don't
mean you selling on emotion.
I think you're referring to the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? That's the whole FOD thing. And I think that you need to have certain elements of emotion in there, but it's not in this, and it has to be in the sense that customer can relate. They can identify their business in what you're offering, in what you're saying, in what you're presenting to them. Because that will bring an emotion in them in terms of, you actually understand me. You actually know who I am, right? And I think that's the most important thing, because everybody, no matter who we are, would like to be perceived unique. I mean, a florist is just not a florist. It's not the same as the other florist. It's different. It's a unique little boutique that's got its own identity, its own way of doing the things. Right? So it has to be reflected in anything that we have to that is being done and that we present to the customers. But it has to be managed in a way so it's possible to have this uniqueness, this feeling in the messages that we have.
So you're describing creating emotion in the customer rather than the salesman, being the emotional factor.
Yeah, but there's no. I mean, a sales rep is a sales rep. I mean, they need to be selling on emotions, yes, but they need to be selling on the customer's emotion. It's their emotion that needs to be there, because after all, it's the customer who is buying. Right? That's what we are trying to sell.
Let's come back to this question of the investment in sales training. And Paul, you've been involved in a group that has taken over other businesses, right? Now, let's say you take over a Yellow Pages business that's in trouble and is very heavily print-based, and you're now going to switch them into the new world. Now, you've got the issue of salespeople that need to be trained. So, what's your view? How many days or how much time do you consider you're going to have to invest? Because clearly there's a retraining requirement. Right? So how are you going to judge that? Is that a question of days, or is it a question of money? Or
I think it's a question of days, and I think it's a question of time. One of the things I was hearing you talking about the 12-month sales cycle, and that in the digital world, we know that we can't replace €1 in print with €1 in online. It's like 1 to 0.2. So in order to get the value of that customer from digital, you have to do the add-on service and the upsell. And you need to do that during the year, whether it's with AdWords, whether it's social media, whether it's Facebook advertising. But you have to have that plan in there. So that's a big, major retraining. And everyone used to have one, if certainly anyone who's got a significant amount of print revenue has a big canvas kickoff. And you have to draw a line in the sand, and you have to take a full week to do the training on that. I mean, you have to lay the strategy out, this is what it is, and then you have to grill and train and train and train. Then you need the follow-up training with the manager. You usually start with the managers first, and then you need the follow-up training. How many days a year? It depends on your sales force, how young they are. You know, age actually doesn't matter on being able to sell digital. So if you have older sales reps, don't worry. That's why you keep it simple, and you don't want them to be experts. You want them to be good salespeople, and you can train them.
I remember Eniro in January 2010, they took every one of their salespeople off the street for 1 month, retraining. They had in total in 3 or 4 markets, they probably had about 400 salespeople. For 1 month, if that's 20 days, that's something like £8,000 a day. So that's a pretty heavy investment.
I would not do that.
The trouble is now, 2 years later, they have a different sales approach. And so that investment didn't have any positive payback.
And I don't know about Eniro's turnover, but I think most publishers have significant turnover in Europe of sales reps. So what they took them off for, a month, and then how many of those lasted before they did the next retraining? So you've got to be very careful on how loyal and how significant turnover you have in your sales force versus how much I'm going to invest. You need to give them the tools to be able to go out and sell, and you need to have the follow-up training. But when you said, 20 days basically, I'm like, no way. No way. Because it's too complicated. Actually, to use somebody else's analogy, if you can't train it in a week, it's probably too complicated.
Well, what are the experiences amongst yourselves here? Is investment in sales training something that you have high on the list, or is it just halfway down the list, or any comments on that? Maybe I can turn it around by saying, is anybody investing 10 sales days a year in retraining? 10 days a year? Anybody doing that? Less than 10? Oh, we have one vote at 10. Less than 10?
I was trying to think, well, come on, we'll have an auction here.
Yeah, we'll have an auction. Well, do we have anybody that's invested nothing in sales training? I'm talking about retraining for a transition. So wait a minute, so we didn't have, there's a lot of hands haven't gone up yet, so I haven't hit the number. So there's nobody doing 0. Between about more than 10 days a year in sales retraining. Maybe we just don't know about putting up the hand. Okay. Rasmus, you're spending time with salespeople. Would you say there's an easy grasp of selling websites for Yellow Pages salesmen, or is it does it require more training than you see happening?
That's a good question. I think it's my experience from now working with a range of companies is that you have to actually look at it in two levels. So one thing is doing cheat sheets for the sales guys and training them in how to ask the right questions, etc. That's one thing, but really having the management as well to understand how is that they are going to enable the sales team to achieve the results. That's the other thing that sometimes might be lacking a little bit. I mean, if you can't coach or train or help your sales team in terms of how to become more successful, then you leave it up to the sales trainer to actually make that happen, right? So it actually has to be viewed in two different ways. But we spent some time with the sales team, with our customers to figure out what are they doing, what are they saying, how are they doing that sales of that online presence. And it's a very interesting experience because some are really good at it. And then talking about passion, one of the guys that we've seen that is probably that is really good. It's one we had a visit with from Europe, in Denmark. He's so passionate about it. He's really passionate about bringing true value to his customers. He's just explaining, talking, and he's very good at having this passion into that. He doesn't really need sales training in that sense, right? And then we've got the other ones, not so much at the Nero because they're pretty decent, but pretty good at this. But we see other sales people that just don't. They are just afraid of that, and that's not sales training. That's working on another level with the sales guy.
Education.
I was thinking about the sales training, and I think that every company here has some form of training, and whether you did a specialty, it depends how fast you move into these, whether you take the bundle or you make a giant leap versus a step, is how much you invest. But I would say that the key focus these days is on that interface between sales, operations, and the customer. And we have digital fulfillment teams, which we don't call them production, we call them digital fulfillment. And that's a mindset change right there for what we expect them to do. We expect them to interact with the customer like a customer service person, but also a subject matter expert to support the sales rep, from the sales rep passing the information on, but clarifying all of the steps in that process, making sure the rep knows what they have to do to pass it off to the digital fulfillment team, and what the digital fulfillment team has to do going forward. The last thing on that is, I would say that digital fulfillment team becomes a secondary upsell channel for you. So that position becomes even more vital to your growth in the organization. Because the relationship isn't just with the sales rep and the customer. Now you've got investment in the back office, and generally they're less expensive. So from a cost effectiveness wise of the sales force, that's utilizing the resources more effectively.
Okay, let's move on from that subject. Any questions? Yes, please, Philip.
I thought your presentation was quite good, and say in Macau we have the traditional way. So we have the canvas, and our sales they go along and try to sell digital. So if we have to move around, how do you say? So you basically sell digital, and then print comes as it comes. And if that's the case, how much frequency should they? I know that you have this upselling, but what would be your path to this transition? So our sales completely forget about the canvas, they just go for digital. In the back, they sell the print. Is that what you suggest?
It's in the bundle.
Look,
And
you can tell right away whether a customer believes in print or not, to be honest. When you pick up the phone, you talk to them, you can handle their print if they're a believer in print. And then you can move them on and say, we have this digital product and we can deliver it effectively through the bundle. The big challenge in a lot of places is when you call up and you say, I'm with Macau Yellow Pages, they just go click. I don't even want to talk to you. So you'll never even get the discussion, especially if you're trying to penetrate either headings that you've lost customers in or headings you haven't been able to penetrate before. I don't know if that really answers it, but what I would say is that your lead story has always got to be succinct, focused on the website, driving traffic, with print support. I literally, our introduction for our sales reps now. Hi, I'm with ClearSense Search. I'm here to talk to you about your online and offline advertising needs. Oh, really? What's your online? Website's this. Offline? Well, actually, we sell Macau Yellow Pages, and we have the tourist guide, and we have this, and we can offer you some different opportunities. And we can bundle it. There you go. That's the way I would approach it. Because if you start leading with your offline, and then your online, you will immediately set the priority in the customer's mind. And if he doesn't buy your offline, you're in trouble.
I'd like to just consider a little bit more detail the question of selling a website. When you sell a website, what are you actually selling, over what period, and what is the content of the contract that you've just sold to the customer? Rasmus, can you perhaps start on that? What do you sell when you sell a website? And I know there's variations on that, but what's the core of what you sell?
Well, I mentioned during the presentation that it's the point of conversion. That's what you're selling. So it's if you think of it as more of a wheel of opportunities that you have to work with the customer around, right? Then if they want to have paid campaigns, for example, you're going to manage that for them. Then adding controlling the landing page becomes very important for you, because then you control the point of conversion. But the next big thing, the next thing you want to do in that process is then moving from the landing page to maybe a mobile optimized version of a website. It might be just a mobile site. It might be a Facebook profile page. There's different things that you can actually sell.
What is the core? Let's take the core of a guy who doesn't have a website, and you're selling him a website.
The core is a mobile optimized website. That's the core.
Right, and he buys that, what's the contractual terms of that, to be specific? He's buying it over at what period of time, what do you have to deliver, when do you bill him? What's the makeup of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Many answers to that.
There are many answers to that. I mean, what we still work with, and we will transition away from this, is a 12-month contract on it. Ultimately, since you're hosting, what you would rather do is a setup fee plus a subscription monthly that lowers the monthly price. Right. The setup fee goes in, and then you just subscription, because internet people believe they can cancel at any time. So
subscription is a key part of the contract.
It will be a key part. And the upsell is adding various services, like I can buy a basic website and then I can add an e-commerce component to it.
Yeah.
And then the e-commerce component costs a little bit more, and then maybe there's an appointment or a scheduling software you want to drop in an iframe in there. Various solutions so that you're continually able, if you put a LinkedIn account, they're continually bombarding it. And wasn't somebody from GoDaddy here? Because they email me constantly, and that's their strategy. that you can constantly reinforce your relationship with the customer for upsell opportunities. You don't even need a person to do it.
Right.
So I think that the idea of a subscription model with email marketing, with support and different things like that is definitely a model.
So that deals with the longevity of the relationship, and it deals with the sales cost being basically just being through upsell opportunities.
See, I don't know how you feel about this, Rasmus, but I'm not a big believer in the self-service model. We could talk about Google. Google thought that they didn't need Yellow Pages and we were dinosaurs because we had sales reps. You can do everything online. Guess what? We are now PSP providers because they realized we actually add value.
I might want to add a comment to that because what has proven to be very, very effective is actually the combination of those two models. Do it for me and do it yourself. The minute the customer actually starts doing work on their own site, on their own thing that you are supplying to them, they start taking ownership in that. Stickiness is the word that you're looking for. And that has proven to be a very successful way of working, of bundling those two into one product, saying you can update this and we'll take care of that because you need news on your website or whatever, right? Then you create ownership, and ownership is emotions, it's a relationship.
But doesn't that then have significant SEO impact?
Not if you, well, it has got impact, because if you don't update it, then it just simply won't
It
show.
doesn't look at itself.
Yeah, but it might be that you have different components that you want them to do. Right? You need to update the pictures of your newest whatever, right? And so it's about working intelligently with what it is you want the customer to actually update, and then you'll take care of what you're the professional in, right? Because it's the you're creating that magical moment where it's my website, but I've got people working on the advanced stuff, and I'm just showing what I'm doing.
Any comments on that? Okay. Okay, well I think on timing we just about right now. So that's I think we've achieved our objective. We've looked at many different markets and how we can satisfy those, and at the same time have had common themes about how we approach the customer and what we're actually saying to the customer. So I'm very grateful for both Paul and for Rasmus, and I ask you please to thank them for their contribution.